My job is to work with the director on whatever TV show I'm working on, whether it's Doctor Who or whether it's Good Omens or whether it's Discovery of Witches or His Dark Materials, and to go through the script and work out sequences where we need storyboards. Now, for most of it, it's just people acting, so you don't need the storyboards for that. But if it's something elaborate where there's special effects or where there's a monster or where there's going to be explosions, you need to work out how things are going to be on screen before you do it. Because there'd be nothing worse than filming something and going, oh, that was rubbish. But if I sit with the director, and the director says, oh, I think it's going to look like this, I think it's going to look like that, and I sit there and I sketch away and sketch away and sketch away, and I go away and I do the drawings up, and the director goes, that's going to be rubbish. All it's cost is a couple of sheets of A4 paper, as opposed to 2 days filming. And if I do stuff and the director goes, that's great, we're going to do that, then it means that when they go on set to film, they already know roughly how it's going to look. And if you think about it, if you're working on a TV show and your big monster, your big scary monster, is in fact something that's going to be CGI, it's not there on the day, is it? It's basically a stick with a golf ball on top of it. Seriously. So the actors are having to react to a stick with a golf ball. But if they can see my storyboards, and they can see my storyboards as a big, scary 7-foot alien monster, they know, oh, okay, I'm reacting to that. I did a show called Class where there was this big giant dragon that came out of this tattoo. And they hadn't designed anything at the time, so in the storyboards I designed the dragon for the tattoo. So the actors knew what this thing was going to look like, and it also meant that when the cameraman was setting up a shot, he knew to frame it because that half of the picture was going to be taken up with the monster, and that half was down here small was going to be taken up with the actors. So it's a way of working with the director to establish how things are going to look later on. And I don't have to do finished drawings, they don't have to be incredibly detailed. But so long as there's enough information on there, it's great to sort of get across, how things are going to look. And it was really important on a show I worked on a couple of years ago called Nightfall, which is about the Knights Templar. And it's about that we had this big sequence where there was a siege, where there's these troops charging in on this castle. And you've got the knights there on horseback, and they've got to fight against them. We were filming it out in Prague. And the problem with filming it out in Prague is that not everybody speaks English. So they can give you all the instructions you like, but if you haven't quite caught what they've said, you're going to get run over by a horse. But if the director can go, it's going to look like this picture that Mike drew, then brilliant, everybody understands the picture. I am currently working on a show called Doctor Who. I'm storyboarding the new series of that. So that's all I can tell you. There's a couple of shows I've worked on over the last couple of years that are coming on this year. There's one called Good Omens, which is based on a book by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. And there's one called His Dark Materials, which is based on the Philip Pullman books, the Northern Lights book. Both of them are absolutely brilliant scripts, and it was a great treat to work on both of them. Getting to visualise. What was great about working on both of them is that I love the books. And one of the things about being an artist is when you read a book, you're constantly making all the pictures appear in your head. And then somebody paid me to put those pictures down on paper, which is great. I basically get paid to be a big kid. I mean, the first time I got to draw the Daleks on Doctor Who was just wonderful. It was the season opener a couple of years back where Missy turns up and ends up working with the Daleks. And it's the Doctor versus Davros and all this. But there's this big Dalek base they built. And so I went on set with the director as they were building it, because obviously I'm there right at the start before a lot of things are done. And we worked out where the Daleks were going to be, and I did all these sketches of how things were going to look. And I then got invited on the day they were shooting those sequences. And I tell you what, it was like playing with the biggest toy set ever. Because where I'd drawn these Daleks, they put real Daleks there. Yeah. So my drawings became real. It was amazing. And I've worked in animation over the years, doing lots of TV shows, things like Horrid Henry and stuff like that, and Egamoggum and Hannah's Outline. So I'm used to seeing puppets be moved around, but this is the first time I'd seen Daleks being moved around. So I was basically 7 years old, just going, yeah. I think it's the challenges. I think it's the fact that whatever TV show I'm working on, there's things I've never done before. There's sequences, there's ways of approaching something that I've never done before. So it's that chance to sit there and work with a new director, or even better still, a director I've worked with before that's asked for me back, because they've got on with me. And I'm going through thinking, oh, we can do this, we can do this. And it's wonderful. Like I said, the Nightfall series, the one about the Knights Templar, I got to storyboard loads of guys in suits of armour charging on horseback. And that was brilliant. You know, actually getting the chance to sort of design a shot like that and then see it filmed the way I drew it. That's one of the nicest things. I mean, my job there is to work and make the director's ideas turn up as pictures, right? But every so often I can sort of like add a little bit and say, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And then if they do it, I'll sit there at home or I'll sit in the cinema and just go, that's me, I did that. Yeah. Nobody else knows, nobody else cares, but I tell you what, it's a thrill. I've done very little movie work. Most of the stuff I've done is for TV. I mean, it's been TV stuff for Netflix and for Amazon, so it's quite big budget stuff. But I've only ever done one movie, which is one last year I did with Eddie Izzard, which is coming out this year, which actually filmed around here. It was meant to be down on the English south coast, but they used Penarth because it's cheaper than Brighton. But I'd love to work on one of the big budget Marvel movies. That for me would be fantastic. I grew up loving Marvel comics. And the idea that, and I've worked for Marvel over the years, I've drawn the X-Men, I've drawn Fantastic Four, I've drawn Spider-Man. But the idea of working on one of the Marvel movies would be brilliant. I would love to do that. I mean, just the idea of doing pictures of Spider-Man and then seeing Spider-Man actually move in the way I'd drawn him would be amazing. I'll tell you what my advice is, and this is interesting, that a lot of my friends that have gone from comics into storyboarding, one of the things that we've found is that one of the reasons that we sort of get on well in film and TV is that we have got no idea about budget. People that have come through the TV industry, if they're storyboarding, they think, oh, we can only afford to do this, we can only afford to do this, and then make everything small. There's people like me, and there's my mate Will Simpson that storyboards Game of Thrones. We just sit there going, how big can we make this? How, you know, imagining it as a comic panel. So some of those shots in Game of Thrones where you've got big sea battles and you've got dragons flying overhead, that's just William sitting there going, this is what I want to draw, I'm going to draw this. And they go, we can afford to do that, we'll do that. It's quite nice if the bigger ideas that you have, the sort of scale that you have of the pieces, it's easy to bring it down and make it affordable, rather than starting small and just trying to sort of scale it up. So all the time, I'm always trying to sort of push for as much as I can out of a shot. I'll give you an example. On the last series of Doctor Who, the Kablam episode, you got the sequence where Yaz and Ryan are going down all these conveyor belts. And the way it was written is that they had them sort of fall in between conveyor belts. And they said, oh, we can have a few of the conveyor belts in the background. And I said, well, look, if this is going to be CG, so you're going to end up, you know, designing it all on computer afterwards, and you're just going to drop them into the image, does it matter how big they are on the screen? They said, well, no, it doesn't matter, because it's going to cost the same to drop them in however big the shot is. I said, right, well, you know, can I suggest we pull the camera right back? And so I drew these frames where they're just teeny tiny on screen and everything else is all these conveyor belts crossing each other. And they use that as a starting point. Whereas say if it's somebody that had worked in TV all their lives, they go, well, we can afford to do this, so maybe we'll have 2 or 3 little ones. But if you think big, you can scale it down the whole time. So whatever ideas you've got for your Doctor Who story, think as big as you can, and then work out what it's going to be later. I found with a few shots I've done where they've said to me, well, that's great, but that blows the budget for the year. Can you redesign it slightly smaller? So I'll do that. I'll come in, and again, like I said before, all it's costing is a couple of sheets of A4 paper. And you know, my time, and I'm not expensive. As opposed to getting a crew on the set on the day and it costs a fortune to put it all together. You just go, no, I can do like this, and then you make it work. But think big all the time. Think amazing. The thing about Doctor Who is the Doctor can go anywhere. The Doctor can do anything. So always make it amazing. Well, I worked drawing comics. I started working in comics about 30 years ago. I'm very, very old. And about 20 years ago, I started working in animation. So I did storyboarding for a lot of TV shows. So you've seen things like Igamaugam and Horrid Henry and things like this. I've done storyboards for those. But the one thing I always wanted to do was storyboard live action stuff. And about 10 years ago, I started doing bits and pieces for small Welsh films. So I started to build up a portfolio of, showing real people doing things as opposed to Horrid Henry just being horrid. And I'd actually done an advert, so I'd done a lot of storyboarding for commercials. I did an advert for Lifebuoy soap in India. So I wasn't in India, I was in Cardiff. So the storyboard was for an advert out there. And there was a mate of mine, Andrew Wildman, who's another storyboard artist, and he'd been working on Doctor Who, and they'd asked him to do a new episode, and it turned out he'd then been offered by a director he'd worked with in the past to go and work on a feature film. And he went, Mike, I've got a choice. I can work on the next episode of Doctor Who, or I can do a feature film with Charlize Theron. And he went, guess what I'm doing, and do you want to storyboard Doctor Who? So because I'd recently done this storyboard for this soap advert, so I got all these fancy dynamic angles and using real people, I just took that into the BBC, and they went, all right, we'll give you a go, and I've been on Doctor Who ever since. Wow. But the thing is, I've done loads of bits and pieces over the years, but it's building up that portfolio of work to show I can do this, I can do this. So I can storyboard animation, I can storyboard live action, I can do all sorts of things. Doing a lot of commercials. Commercials make you a lot of money, but you feel really bad afterwards. Because you're dealing with people that want everything turned around overnight. And just like we've spent 6 months researching the idea for this commercial. We spent 3 months hiring the actors. We spent 4 months working the script out. We're shooting it tomorrow in Cape Town. Can you do a storyboard tonight? So you're never going to be healthy doing storyboards for commercials. But at least with TV, you know that, like say with Doctor Who, I'm working on Doctor Who now, and it'll be on TV next year. So I know there's a schedule on that work, and that's great. But and the thing is, because I did Doctor Who and got to meet some directors I worked with on Doctor Who, I've worked on other TV shows those directors have been on, because they've asked me to go and work on it. So that's been quite nice. So it's not, you think the TV industry has been massive, but it's not that big. And if you're good, and you're nice to people, and you're decent, and you meet deadlines, people will hire you again. So I sort of built it up into almost like a word of mouth thing. So. Working on the new series was great. Working with the mostly new crew, working with Arwell as the designer was brilliant, because like the Dalek episode, the New Year special. So being there in the studio and they're putting all these ideas for Daleks together was fantastic, because we go through all these little, we can look like this, it can look like this, and so I was storyboarding at the same time they were designing it. So that was great, because you're all part of this big creative buzz. It's fantastic. And quite often when you're working on something like Doctor Who, because Doctor Who is a different story every week, which means it's a whole new world, it's big new sets, you're always there and there's always something being built. So there's big signs all over the BBC saying you're not allowed to photograph. There's one person that doesn't apply to, and that's me. Because if they built the sets and they want the characters to fit right with the sets, I've got to photograph it. My studio is down in Cardiff Bay. The BBC is down in Cardiff Bay. Bad Wolf is down in Cardiff Bay. So quite often I go to Cardiff Bay. But I have travelled. I've worked on some shows where I've been away and done stuff. When I worked on, I could go back to Nightfall. I got a call out of the blue on a Friday night from my director, because I'd done some work on the show over here, and he said, "Have they told you you're flying to Prague?" And I went, no. Monday you're flying to Prague. I went, oh, okay. So I ended up flying at 7 o'clock in the morning, and that was from Bristol, so they had to get me a cab at like 5 in the morning to drive me over to Bristol to fly to Prague. I was out there for a week working on the set, and the thing about working in Prague is it's amazing. It's a huge, huge studio. It's an old Hollywood-style studio, and because there's loads of woods around Prague as well, so when you're doing all these Knights in Armour stuff, the woods are all there, so it all looks fantastic. And I was out there for a week, and I was working, doing storyboards in the studio and going out to the location where the fights were going to be and chatting with the actors and sort of blocking out fights and things like this. And on the Thursday, so I started to pack up and said, have they told you you're staying another week? I went, no, you're staying another week. So, okay, I need to get home because I'm moving house next week. Okay. But I was as well. So at some point I need to go back to Cardiff.
Yeah.
Things I do have to do. But yes, it can be. My mate William, the one I said works on Game of Thrones, he does a lot of movies in Europe. So he can just, at the blue, been told, we're filming in Berlin next week, get your bag packed. So then he shoots out to Berlin and does something, and then he goes back, because he lives in Belfast, where they film Game of Thrones. So, and then he's back in Belfast again for a few months working on Game of Thrones. So yes, you can go around a lot of places, or quite often you do the work and they go off somewhere exciting. On Good Omens, they got me up to London to block out a whole lot of storyboards. And I said, oh, this is really exotic locations here. I said, yeah, we're flying to South Africa next week. I said, oh, am I coming? I went, no. You've done all your work now. I went, no, that's a really interesting question because it varies. Because for the most part, you're only storyboarding certain sections. It can be, like on Doctor Who, I've worked on episodes, like the one with the witches last year. I worked on that for about 3 or 4 weeks. Where Kablam, I worked on for about 3 days. Because they only needed storyboards for a little bit. The witches one, because it was all going to be filmed on location, we had to block everything out and we had to work out the ducking stool and all that. And like, I'll design the ducking stool. So I had to work with, to get these designs initially to work out to draw all that. So it's the length of the piece for string bit, because it can be a couple of days, it can be a month and a half.